In this tutorial, we're going to look at lots of different ways that we can create components from the vectors that we drew up in a previous session. We're going to look at assembling the parts to create a full 48-inch moulding, and then take that a stage further by looking at how we can distort the moulding to create the arch that you can see here. So let's go to File, Close. So let's go and open an existing file. From the project folder, we're going to open the Lily Leaf Moulding Vector Drawing.crv file and then press open. Okay, so these are the vectors that we created in the previous vector drawing tutorial. So let's just start by going to our job setup. The first thing that I want to do is I want to look at adjusting the modelling resolution. I want to really maximise the amount of points that we have in our job, so we're going to go with a very high modelling resolution. The appearance here, I'm going to go with a Canadian maple, and then we'll just go ahead and press OK. And then we'll go to the top in our view toolbar, and we're going to look at tiling our windows horizontally so that we have the 2D view at the top and the 3D view at the bottom. Now, if you watched the previous tutorial to this example, you'll know that when we created these vectors, we created them in a way that uses specific modelling tools. So to create the base shape, we're going to look at using this vector here with this vector here, and we're going to use the 2-rail sweep tool. So these will be our 2 rails, in which case we're going to sweep this cross section in between the 2 rails to create the base moulding. So let's go and create that shape. So go into the Modelling tab. Now before I create any components, I just want to rename level 1. I'm going to rename that. We're going to call this the base level. So any components that I create now will be added to this level. So as I said, we're going to look at using the 2-rail sweep tool to create that basic moulding. So into the 2-rail sweep form. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is select my 2 rails. So here I've got a vector. I'm going to hold down Shift and we're going to select the vector at the bottom of the job. Then we're going to use the option here, Use Selection. That's now transformed those vectors into drive rails. I can see that the start points are parallel with each other, and the direction that our sweep will go is from left to right. Okay, so now all we need to do is select a cross section, then we can work our way down the form. We're going to uncheck scale cross sections with width, uncheck sweep between spans. We're also going to uncheck scale to an exact height, and then we're going to give that a name, and we're just going to call this basic moulding. Okay, and then if I go ahead and press apply, it will create that based on the vectors that we use here. And so if I just twiddle that in the 3D view, we can see the shape of this cross section being swept through the 2 rails here. Okay, so I'm happy with that, so we'll put that in Z, and then we'll close out of the 2-rail sweep form. So next up, we're going to look at modelling in the leaf and the stem. So to do that, as we're working with a new area of the design, I'm going to include a new level. So we're going to right click on the base level, we're going to insert a new level, right click, we're going to rename that level, and we're going to call this level Leaf and Stem. I'm just going to switch off the base level and just minimize that. I don't need to see that right now. We're just going to focus on creating the leaf first, and then we'll look at creating the stem afterwards. So with the leaf and stem level, the active level, let's go ahead and create our first shape. So we'll start by selecting this bottom part of the leaf here. We're going to go into the Create Shape tool. So we're going to go with a curved profile, and I'm going to put in an angle of 65 degrees. Okay, working our way down the form, I want to give that an exact height of 0.15 of an inch, and then we'll go ahead and give that a name. We're just going to call this one Leaf 1. We can press apply and see the result of that, and you can see what that looks like. Okay, so that's good. We'll just put that back in the Z view, and then we'll go over here and we'll start a new component. Now we're going to select this vector here and we're going to look at creating the inner part of the leaf. So again, we're going to go with a curved profile with an angle of 65 degrees. This time we're going to scale the height of this so that it's just 0.1. We're going to set the combine mode of that to subtract. It's subtracting into the component we just created. And we'll give that a name. We'll call this one inner leaf. And then we'll hit apply to see the changes there. Okay, so you can see the effects of these settings here in the 3D view. Put that back in Z. And we'll go ahead and start a new component. This time we're going to take the left side of the leaf, again curve profile 65 degrees, we're going to scale this back up again to 0.15, set the combine mode of that to merge so it's blending in with the rest of the composite model, and then we'll give this a name and we'll just call this one leaf 2. Press apply, we can take a look at that in the 3D view, put that back in Z, and then we can close out of the create shape form. So next up we're going to look at modelling the stem. We're going to use this vector here and we're going to look at extruding cross sections along this vector using the extrude and weave modelling tool. So let's select the stem vector, then we'll come over to the extrude and weave tool, which is the third icon along. I'll click on that and that will open up the extrude and weave modelling tool. So the first thing that we need to do is select our drive rail. Now we already have our vector selected, so all I need to do is use this option here to use selection, and that will transform that vector into a drive rail. And all we need to do now is assign a cross section or multiple cross sections to the drive rail to get the shape that we want. So we're going to start with the larger half circle at the end here. So to do that, we're going to select our cross section. We're going to click on the start point to apply that cross section. You can see these lines here represent the width of the cross section, and that's going through all the way to the end point. Now, what we want to do is we want to make this as natural looking as possible. So we're going to look at applying the smaller cross section, which is this one here. You can see it's much smaller than the first one that we had selected. We're going to assign that to the end point over here. So when I click on that, we can see that we have our red point here, which represents the red cross section. And then at the end point here, we can see we've got a yellow point, and that represents this yellow cross section here. So we'll just zoom our view to the active drawing limits. And so the idea is that it's going to start with this larger cross section, and it's going to gradually decrease in width until it gets to the end point where it would reach the profile of this cross section here. Okay, so let's just go ahead and press apply just to see what this looks like. And so in the 3D view, we can see that larger cross section at its start point, and as it's been extruded through the rail, you can see that that cross section is getting smaller until it reaches its end point at its smallest. Now, one thing that does become evident when you create your initial extruded shape is the actual shape of your part. So I can see here that maybe I could look at adjusting my vector so that this part of my stem better swoops into the leaf shape. And we can do that without having to leave the extrude and weave form. So to do that, you simply click in the white space and then press N on the keyboard, and that will put our vector into node edit mode so that we can then make the small adjustments and changes to the vector, and then look at applying the same settings with the extrude and weave tool to see how it looks. Okay, so we'll start by taking this handle. I'm just going to look at bringing that down a little. Okay, like that. That might be a little bit too far, so we'll just nudge that in. Then what we can do is we could take this handle, nudge it over to the left a little, and then we could press apply just to see how that looks. So with every tweak and change, you can see that I can get an instant update of how the new component will look. Okay, so I think that's flowing into the leaf a little better, and then the top portion is swooping around nicely as well. Now, one other thing that I'd like to do is look at maintaining the thickness of our stem to somewhere around here. I feel that it transitions into the smaller cross section much too quickly. So to do that, we can simply take our larger cross section and then we'll just look at applying it somewhere around here. And again, just go ahead and press apply just to see how that looks. Okay, so it's not too bad. I might want to just make some adjustments to the bottom portion of our leaf. And again, to help us see this better, let's just put this into merge so it's blending into the leaf there. Okay, so it's not too bad. And then if we just go into node edit mode, so N on the keyboard, I'm just going to click on our cross section there. And I'm just going to nudge this down ever so slightly and then hit apply. Okay, so much better. We've got a nice curvature going in there that's going into the leaf just nice. Right then, so I'm happy with what we've got there. You can see in our form we have scale to an exact height switched on where we're scaling it to 0.15 of an inch. If we uncheck that, we can see how that looks. So you can see it's just increased the height there. Okay, it's not too bad. However, we will look at controlling that. So the highest part of our stem is 0.15. And then we can just give that a name. So we're just going to call this one stem. And then we can simply press apply. And then we can close out of the form. So now I want to create a smaller version of our leaf and stem that's going to sit somewhere around here as part of our overall composition. So to do that, I'm going to select stem from the component tree, hold down shift and then select leaf 1. So by holding down shift, it just means that everything else in between stem and leaf 1 will also be selected. And I'm going to select anywhere on our components grayscales, and that will then put our selection into transform mode. And I can see we're in transform mode because of the handles here. So in order for us to create a copy, I'm going to hold Control down on our keyboard. I'm also going to hold down Shift so that when I pull on one of these handles, it's going to scale it down in proportion. Then I can let go and that will create a copy that is smaller than the one we've just created. Okay, so all I need to do now is just look at moving this, positioning this around. I want this leaf to blend into our stem over here. We can just nudge that over to the left using the arrow keys, maybe rotate that round a little bit more, like so, and then again we'll just nudge that over to the left, okay, until you're happy with what we've got. So I like the way that this stem is blending into the larger stem, so I'm going to leave that as it is. So let's just click into the white space just to deselect everything there. So now we can look at deleting this part of our stem. And so to do that, we just simply draw a vector around the bounds of the area that we want to clear. So let's go into the drawing tab and we're going to use the polyline tool. So over in the 2D view, let's just activate that there. So I'm just going to draw in a vector like so, and then I'm just going to roughly sketch around it. And then if I press tab on the keyboard, that will close that vector. And if I right click, we can then exit out of the polyline form. Right, and so the way that we clear components within vectors is we take our component that we want to clear, hold down shift and select the vector that we want to clear it to, and then we're going to go into the modeling tab and we'll use this option here to clear everything inside the selected vector. And with a hit of the button, you can see it's just removed everything inside that vector. Then we can take that vector and we can look at deleting it. So let's use this option here to zoom active view to the drawing limits. So now we want to create a copy of what we can see here over to the right hand side, whereby we're going to have a nice shape that's just going to blend into the center. It's going to come down and then it's going to come up. Okay, so to do that, we're going to look at selecting all of our components in the component tree by holding down Shift. I'm going to right click and we're just going to group our components. I'm going to right click and we're just going to rename this group, and we'll just call this one very simply left leaf group. Okay, and then with that we're just going to change the combine mode of this group to merge. And we can still access all of the individual components that make up this group by ungrouping the group if we wanted to. Right, so let's just minimize that. Then we're going to take our group and then we're going to go over to the mirror tool. So first off, we're going to look at taking our group and we want to create a copy of this whereby we're mirroring it about the job center, and we're going to flip that horizontally. So to do that, we use the flip horizontal option where we flip about the job center, which is this point over here. And we're going to use the option to create a mirrored copy, so we're going to check that box there and then press flip horizontal, and there is our copy created over on the other side. Now with this newly created copy, we just want to look at flipping this vertically. So this time we do not want to create a mirrored copy, so we're going to uncheck this option. We're still going to flip this about the job center. This time we're going to use the flip vertical option, and you can see it's done that there for us. So let's close out and we'll just click into the space to deselect that group, and you can see we've got a real nice transition going through the center point there. And that's all down to the fact that when we originally created this vector in the vector drawing tutorial, we did so whereby we took the control handle and moved it over to the right hand side of the line, so that when we come to create our component from these vectors, they'll blend seamlessly through the center. Okay then, right, so let's just right click to come out of node edit mode, and then we'll come over to our group. We'll just right click, we'll just rename this group, and in here we're just going to call this one right group. Okay, put that in there and then click to accept that. So now let's go ahead and switch on the base level. Okay, so you can see we've got some rather interesting results here where the creases of the base moulding is actually being transmitted through the leaf and the stem. And the reason for that is because our leaf and stem level is currently adding on top of our base level. And what we want to do is we want to have a nice smooth transition where the leaf and stem is sat nicely on top of the moulding without the creases being transmitted through. And so we're going to have to look at creating a smooth underlined shape that's going to merge with our base level so that we can create that effect. So to do that, we're actually going to create a vector, which is going to be the underlying cross section, and we're going to base it loosely on the original profile vector that we've got here. So let's just go ahead and maximize the 2D view, and then we'll use this option here to zoom active view to the drawing limits. So let's go into the drawing tab, and we're going to look at drawing this underlined shape using the polyline tool. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in and we'll just go across there like so until we can see the entire cross section. So as I said, we're going to loosely base this on the original profile, and the idea is we want to create a smooth shape that doesn't include these creases that we can see here and here. So snap to this point here, snap to that point there, snap here, and then snap. Right click to come out of the polyline tool, and there we have a basic shape. So with that, we're going to put that into node edit mode. We're going to right click, and then we're going to look at turning this span into a Bezier span. Take that handle, I'm just going to put that up there. This handle, we're going to align that there like so. Then we're going to insert a point here, and we're going to bring this as close as we can to the original curve, okay? And then we could look at altering the handles here. So we want to take this handle, nudge it over just so it's a little bit bigger than the original curve, which we can see there. And then if we just zoom out and just come down here, what I can do is I could look at taking this control handle. We'll just look at nudging that over to the right. And then we can take that point and then we can just nudge it to the left. So when I'm nudging, I'm just using the arrow keys of the keyboard. I want to make this as close as possible without it going over the original cross section. And then we can come over here, take that handle and just nudge that in. So again, trying to get it as close to the original. Take this point here, just nudge that over to the left. And we'll take this control handle, nudge it over to the right. And then we'll just check over the top there. Okay, and that's fine. So if we use this option here to zoom active view to the drawing limits, you can see that we've created a new smooth profile that closely follows the original shape, but we're not including these creases that we have in the original. So now we can look at modelling that smooth underlying shape. So let's just tile our windows horizontally. We'll go into the modelling tab. Just going to undraw the visibility of the base level, and then we're going to look at adding in a new level as we're working with a new area of our design. So we're going to right click on leaf and stem, we're going to insert a new level, right click, and we're going to rename this level, and we're going to call this one smooth shape. Okay, so that's in there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at using this option here, and that will create a component based on our visible model, which it can see in the 3D view. And so when I do that, it creates a component, and if I undraw the leaf and stem level, we'll just minimize that, you can see that we now have one component that represents the leaf and stem groups that we had within this level. So now we can look at creating the smooth underlying shape. So to do that, we're going to use the 2-rail sweep again, where we're going to use this vector, hold down shift. We're also going to use this vector here as our drive rails. So if we go into the 2-rail sweep form, we use this option here to use selection, then we're going to apply our newly created smooth underlying cross section. And here we're just going to give this a name, and we'll call this one smooth UL for underlying, and then shape in there. And then we simply can go ahead and press apply. That will create that for us. Then we can close out and we can just take a look at what we've got. Okay, so you can see that a smooth shape. Okay, and you can see the profile that we've got, which is the same as the vector that we just drew out. Okay, so that's good. So let's just put that back into the Z view. And then we'll have a look at switching the base level on. Okay, so we can still see those creases being transmitted through. If we put that in the ISO view, we can also see we've really gained quite a lot of height there. And the reason for that is that our smooth shape level is currently adding on top of the base level. And that's why we're seeing the creases being transmitted through. It's also why we've seen an increase in the actual shape height. So what we need to do is we need to look at changing the combine mode of the smooth shape level so that it's merging in with the base level. So to do that, let's right click on the level, go to combine mode, and we'll set that to merge. So now that we've altered the combine mode so that it's merging in with the base level, we've actually lost the creases of the original moulding. And that's all down to the fact that we're using the underlying shape, which is just a little bit bigger than the original cross section. So everything's been obscured underneath. So what we need to do is we need to look at cropping the smooth underlying shape to the shape of the leaf and stem component. So to do that, we simply take our smooth underlying shape, hold down shift, and we're going to select the copy of the visible model, which is the leaf and stem group. Then we're going to come over and we're going to use this option here to clear area of selected component outside selected vectors, or in this case, the last selected component that you'd selected in your list, and this being the leaf and stem. So here we're going to use this option here, and that's going to clear everything away. And the result of that is exactly what I wanted to see here in the 3D view. So we can see we've got our stem and our leaf, and that's sat proud on top of the moulding. The creases of the moulding are not transmitting through, and that's all down to the fact that we created this underlying shape. So I just temporarily undraw that. So the underlying shape we cropped back to the shape of the stem and the leaves, and we can see that there. And with the smooth level set to merge, so it's blending in with the base shape, we're not seeing the creases transmitting through, and all we've simply done is just applied the model of the stem and the leaf so it's sitting on top of the smooth underlying shape. That's given us that effect there. So now we're at a stage when we're ready to create the full 48-inch length moulding. So just to help us organise our file a little better, I'm just going to look at moving all of the vectors onto a different layer. I don't need to see them anymore. So to do that, we'll go to Edit, Selection, select all vectors, and then we can right click on any one of these vectors and say Move to Layer, New Layer, and we're going to call this layer Vectors. And then we're going to make that invisible, inactive, and press OK. Then we're going to go to our layer drop down bar at the top here. We're going to change the name of layer 1 to Components. And then we can just click into the space here. So let's go into the drawing tab. I'm going to go back into the job setup form. So we're going to change our XY datum position from the center. We're going to make it the lower left hand corner by pressing on this option here. Okay, so you can see now everything is referenced from X0, Y0 being in the lower left hand corner. And then we can look at altering the width. We don't need to adjust the height, it's just the width that we're changing. We're going to change that to 48 inches, and then we're going to go ahead and press OK. So we know that our moulding is currently 12 inches wide, and so we could look at getting 4 copies in the 48-inch wide moulding. So let's go over to the modelling tab. So we're going to take the base, we're going to hold down Control, we're going to select the copy of the visible model and the smooth underlying shape. Then we're going to use this tool here to create a linear array copy of the selected components. So in this form we can now specify how we want to create these copies. Okay, so here we're going to go with 1 row. Okay, so we're only going across in this case, where we're going to put in 4 copies going in X. Then we need to choose the spacing whereby we can specify a gap or we can specify an offset. Okay, now in this case we're actually just going to use the offset, and we're going to go 12 in X because that's the size of my part, and 0 in Y. Then we could simply come over and press copy, and that should create our linear array copies of our original design. Okay, so we can see what's happening there, in that the way each copy is interacting with each of them. We can see that's probably because our combine mode of the base shape is actually set to add. So if we just close out, we can see that here. So if I just select all of the base shapes, right click into the combine mode, and we set them all to merge, that should remove that effect. Okay, so I like what we've got there. However, we could look at further enhancing the design by looking at how we could take each alternate leaf and stem motif and mirror it to the previous one. So let's have a look at doing that. So let's just go and we'll just undo the combine modes of the base shapes, and then we'll undo that array copy. Okay, we're going to take the base component, we're going to set the combine mode of that to merge, so when we create the arrays, they're going to be blending in with each other. And then we're going to look at creating a new level. So we'll right click on the smooth shape and we're going to insert a new level, right click, rename the level, and we're going to call this one alternate array. Then we're just going to undraw the base shape for now, and with the alternate array level, the active level, we're going to look at creating a component from the visible model, which is the smooth and aligned shape and the copy of the visible model that's sat on top. And we're going to use that option to do that. Okay, so we've done that there. Now I can undraw the smooth shape, we can minimize that, and then we could look at switching on the base component. Okay, so we need to just set the combine mode of the alternate array level so that it's merging in with the base shape. So let's start off by taking the base shape and we're just going to apply a standard array on there. So go back into the array copy tool, exact same settings, and we'll just go ahead and press copy. Okay, so there is the base molding, and we can close out. Then we can select our newly created component, the copy of the visible model. We'll go back into the array copy tool. And so we're going to go with the exact same settings in terms of the rows and columns and the offset, except this time we're going to look at this symmetry option here. Okay, so as I said, we want to make every other array a mirrored version of the previous. Okay, so this component here is represented by this button here. Okay, so at the moment it's an L shape, so the next component along, we want it to be a mirrored version of this shape. So if I click on that, you can see that is now mirroring this shape here. And so when I go ahead and press copy, it should create the copy where we're alternating every other one, so it's the mirrored version of the first. Okay, so it's exactly like this. So it's exactly what I wanted. Right then, so we can close out of this form. And so now we could look at taking this a stage further, where we could look at distorting this moulding to create an arch. So let's come over to our component tree. We're going to right click on alternate array. We're going to insert a new level. We're going to right click and we're going to rename the level, and we're going to call this one arch. Okay, then with that level selected, we're going to use this option here to create a component from the visible model. And then we can just simply turn everything else off, and we'll just minimize those levels. So all we have is the arch level switched on, which has the copy of our visible model in there. So now we need to alter our job setup to accommodate the arch shape. So let's go into the drawing tab, and we're going to go into the set job dimensions and origin, and here we're going to look at altering the width of this to 40, and we're going to alter the height of this to 20, and then we could simply go ahead and press OK. Right then, so to start with, we're going to look at drawing an arc, and what we'll do with that arc is then distort the moulding around it to create the arch shape. So to create an arc, let's go into the Draw Arc tool. So we're going to create our arc using the centre, start and end point. We're going to specify some precise values in here to create the arc. So for x, for the start point, we're going to go with x at 6, y at 1, and then the end point of the arc is going to be x at 34 and y at 1. Then we're going to set our radius. So in this case, I'm going to give this a radius of 14, and then we could go ahead and press create. Okay, so this vector here represents the inside edge of the arc that we're going to create. So let's just close out of the create arc form. Now when we created this arc, we set the radius of this to be 14 inches. So we know that we've got a diameter of 28 inches. We also know the height of our moulding is 4 inches, and so we would have an outside diameter of 36 inches. And so we want to distort this moulding around the curve of this vector. And so to minimise the part being stretched, we're going to look at setting the size of this moulding so that it's the correct length of the arc that we've got here. So to do that, we're going to go over select our component and we're going to use the set selected object size tool. So as I said, we're going to have an outside diameter of 36 inches. We know that our moulding is 4 inches high and we have an inner diameter of 28 inches. And so the median diameter between the inside and the outside edge is going to be 32 inches. And this is the value that we're going to use to scale the moulding. So if we come over to set selected object size, we're going to make sure we uncheck this option to link XY, as we only want to alter the width of our part, which needs to be the same length as the arc. So to work out the circumference of a circle, we're going to use the formula pi times the diameter. Now the diameter in our case is going to be 32, and that's the median value between the inner diameter of 28 and the outer diameter of 36. And we only need half of the circle. So in here we can actually put in calculations. So for the width, we're going to type in P for pi, followed by an asterisk, and the asterisk stands for times or multiply, and then we're going to do 32, so that is the median value, so 32 divided by, so we'll put in a slash there, divided by 2 because we only need half of the circle, and then we simply put in equals, and that will input the value for us. So then I could simply go ahead and press apply, and you can see it's slightly stretched, however it still looks okay. So then we can simply close out there. And with that component selected, we're going to shift and select the arc, and then we're going to come over to the distort tool. We're going to use this option here above a single curve. Got a check there saying that this is suitable to apply this, so we can apply that, and then we could take a look at how that's been distorted, and you can see now we have a beautiful arch shape. So let's just maximize the 3D view to see what we've got there. And so that completes this tutorial where we've looked at various modelling tools to model the basic moulding. We saw how to use the array tool to create the full 48-inch moulding, and then we finished that off by distorting the component to the arc to create the arch version. Right then, so let's go to File, go to Save As, then in the Project folder, I'm going to call this one Lily Leaf Moulding 3D Modelling. Press Save and you can access that from there.